Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Racing Across America is sponsored by Sakatoga Stable, home of Funnyside and 'Tis the Law. Be part of Sakatoga's next great story with ownership opportunities now available in our yearlings. Get on the bus at sakatoga.com. Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Early start at Aqueduct today. It's an 11:40 kickoff, and that'll be the game plan. They put out their post times for the next, into December at least, and it bounces around. But there will be some days where yesterday it was an early start, but there'll be some days, with the daylight savings having ended. And if they try to get in 10 races, they get the morning start. So there's an early start today. So we're starting a little early so we can wrap up before the pregame show. But again, just be aware that the post times at Aqueduct will kind of bounce around. And I know somebody said to me yesterday, I missed the first race because they went off a little bit early. So make sure you check if you're playing the New York races over the next couple of months or so. Anyway, all right, on today's show, Laurel. Couple of nice 2-year-old stakes at Laurel this weekend or today. So I invited John Piassek on. We'll have John on typically if there's some nice stakes action to give us some thoughts. So a little bit later on, we'll look at those two nice 2-year-old stakes down at Laurel coming up for this afternoon. But we're just a week away from the big weekend, and it was a really nice weekend of racing out at Del Mar last week, Friday and Saturday, with the Breeders' Cup. I know Saturday we had a great crowd out here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Steve Bick did very well with the bankroll, and so we've been talking about it all week and just talking with people I see in the supermarket or whatnot. Everybody looking back and talking about their scores or their near misses, but lots of great racing and lots of great stories coming out of it. So I thought being only a week out, let's do a little recap. And a gentleman who was on the ground during the week for the Breeders' Cup, part of the Breeders' Cup notes team, our friend Tim Wilkin, now back in the Capital District. And I thought we'd reach out and get some thoughts on last weekend. Tim, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Just flew back home last night. Spent 5 days out in sunny California after the Breeders' Cup to decompress a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter. You had some pictures and some videos. The one that got me was the guy walking down the beach with the bird on his head.
Yeah, that was just looking out over the balcony one morning, and there he was. He was feeding them, and all of a sudden, one of them jumped on his head, and off he went. So I guess that's what they do in California. But I also went up to LA one day and drove around in a it wasn't me out driving it, but it was a convertible, some kind of service. Took us around and took Hollywood sign and all up to the old homes and stuff. It was kind of cool. It was kind of cool.
That's the kind of thing you see in movies or whatnot. The tour of the stars' homes, as it were. I was out in L.A. For the first time a few weeks ago. I have a couple of nephews who live out there, and they gave me the personal tour of. We went and saw the Beverly Hills sign and all. I guess if you go out there, you're obligated.
Yeah. One thing though, they didn't show me your house out there.
Well, you just said you looked out at the balcony on the beach. You had a nice beachfront view while you were down in the Del Mar area.
Yeah, it was out at Mission Beach. It was really nice. Second year in a row I did that. I figured, hey, if I'm going to be out there, might as well stay and enjoy some of the weather, even though the last days it rained in San Diego.
Oh, well, unusual.
Major bummer.
Yeah,
major bummer.
I hear you.
But it was okay. It was.
Before we get to the races, we're a little off topic now, but I'm going to stay a little off topic because you said you flew in last night. I'm just curious, what was the airport situation like?
Well, I had my worries because our flight left at 6:30 from a.m. 6:30 San Diego, and it was all about gloom and doom of the TSA and there was then all of that, and got to the airport at like 4, and there was no one at all at the Southwest counter. The kiosks were turned off, so we had to wait until they came to turn them on. I mean, once that happened, I mean, it went pretty smoothly, but it was crowded. It probably took about 35 minutes to get through the TSA, which isn't bad. And there were some lines that were not open. And then in Denver, my connecting flight was absolutely no problem.
Oh,
I mean, I didn't see any signs, of the outgoing flights. I didn't see any of them were canceled. So that maybe it was just Southwest, but I know that some people did have some travel headaches, but they all got home.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that it's working out for the most part. But yeah, travel is certainly, watch the news the past 2 or 3 days. It's a little dicey. All right, let's get to it. Pulled up an aerial shot of Del Mar. I've never been there. Love to go there because, as we can see from the shot, there's the ocean in the background. You have to love that. But just give us an overview of the 2 days. The crowd size as compared to when they go to bigger venues was certainly a little bit less, understandably, because of the size of the venue. But you're out at Southern California, as you kind of alluded to earlier. The weather certainly plays out nicely. So just give us an overview of the couple of days.
Well, of course, the weather was fantastic, as you would expect it to be out there. For putting in perspective, the crowd size on Saturday, 5,000 and change. Last year it was 36,000 and change. But if you compare it to 3 years ago, when they were 2 years ago, Santa Anita in 2023, they had 66,000 people, obviously a much bigger venue. I mean, it seemed, for the size of Del Mar, it's not a huge place. I mean, it's big, but it's not Santa Anita big or Old Belmont big. Very comfortable for the fans that were there. And, this is the second year I've been to Del Mar, and you can't beat the setting with the ocean. I mean, I would still take Saratoga over Del Mar for my preference of a track, not necessarily for the Breeders' Cup because it could never be there. But I think Santa Anita is my favorite venue for the Breeders' Cup, obviously because of the weather and the size, and you have the San Gabriel Mountains in the background. And I just pray that Santa Anita stays with us for a little bit longer, right? Because you've heard all the stories about what might happen to that. But I think it will be safe at least through the Olympics. I guess the equestrian events will be held in Santa Anita. I guess 28. So it's just that's a story for a different day about the future of these racetracks. But to have a venue where you can showcase the sport, and you have a setting like you have at Del Mar or Santa Anita. It's a win. It's a win for the sport. It's able to showcase the sport in the right way. You don't want to, and no offense to like the Monmouths of the world, when they had it, in 2007, they just had bad luck and it rained the whole weekend just about. You want to have an even playing field for the best day of racing. So it's a no-brainer to have it at venues like that.
Yeah, and it's Southern California, as you say. The last day there rained, which is rare. And so you are going to likely get that good weather, which we do want for the Breeders' Cup, and that was the case last weekend. And I agree with you. When I was out at L.A., made my first ever visit to Santa Anita, and that I've said multiple times since the visit, that's a perfect venue for the Breeders' Cup because, as you say, weather, scenic with the mountains in the background, and the facility was huge. I was amazed. And so there can be different price points for the crowd, and it'll handle a big crowd. So I could see why people over the years have said that is the perfect venue for the Breeders' Cup. But last weekend we were at Del Mar. Let's get to the races now. Let's start with the Classic, get some thoughts and what the reaction was around and in the press box and whatnot. Breeders' Cup Classic, we're going to watch him come down the stretch here. Forever Young, he was impressive. Number 5, Forever Young, over number 7, Sierra Leone. I had put Sierra Leone on top, and he gets the wide trip and still runs very well and winds up, the chart margin's only half a length. I don't know if you were sweating if you had Forever Young, but Fierceness 3rd. So the logicals were in there, but boy, it was an impressive performance from Forever Young.
It was the third time was the charm for Forever Young in the U.S. You had the the near miss in the Derby last year, and then the Breeders' Cup Class Legend. This is a serious racehorse. That's I mean the excuse me. This was his 13th career start. He's now got 10 wins, and I guess they're going to leave him in training. So who? I mean, I'm thinking he'll run up somewhere overseas, and I don't know if he'll be still in training when they come to the Breeders' Cup next year. But he's a wonderful horse. But the starts, the air went out of the balloon earlier in the week when Sovereignty was ruled out. With the temperature. I mean, that leading up to the Classic, the whole thing was this was the greatest Classic field in the history of the Breeders' Cup. You might get arguments from people from 1998, but this had all the makings of a phenomenal race. And it was still a good race, don't get me wrong. But I would have loved to have seen what would have happened if Sovereignty ran, because I think he was the best horse heading into the race. And I think it would have been him and Forever Young battling down the stretch. But you can't knock Sierra Leone too, and the job Chad Brown did with him. I mean, he retires. He's never been off the board. So the Classic, I think the only disappointment you have, there were a couple of them. Todd Fletcher expected big things out of his trio, Fierceness, Mind Frame, and Antiquarian, and they were 3rd, 5th, and 8th. The horse that I liked a little bit was Baeza, and he lost all start at the start when he hopped at the break. And talking to John Sheriff afterwards, he said he lost all chance after that. I was just looking to beat the favorites, and I had no chance after that. But my win ticket would have been all over Sovereignty if he had ran. And that was just a sad thing, because, the thing that gets me, Seth, is all these people, all the experts on social media are tearing Bill Mott apart, saying they didn't ship early enough. What are they kidding me? He went out a week before Wednesday. I mean, if you're going to complain about that, well, Todd's horses didn't come out till Sunday. Sovereignty was one of the first horses on the ground. They did nothing wrong with how they prepared that horse for this race. It was just one of those things. And the air just emptied out when that was announced that he'd gotten the fever, because as soon as it was announced that he had the fever, he knew he wasn't going to run. That was just what was going to happen. And, to Bill Mott's credit, he was a champ throughout this whole thing. Because on the Breeders' Cup notes team, he was one of the guys I had to meet with him every day, and he was always. And early in the week, before I got out there the Friday before the Breeders' Cup, but early before Sovereignty got sick, I was the only one there with him just about every morning, which kind of surprised me, even though we all know that the media attendance is dwindling at the Breeders' Cup. I think there was only, outside of California, I think the only newspaper outside of the trades was Gene Kirscher from Buffalo, our friend Gino, and I think that was the only newspaper outside of California that showed up. And but Bill he didn't try to sugarcoat anything, and he was up front with anyone that wanted to talk to him. And if he was really devastated, he didn't show it. I mean, he was a total pro through the whole process. And he's been in the game long enough to know that when something like this happens, there's about a 0% chance that they're going to run because of the fever. And they did the right thing. They took care of the horse.
Yeah, they announced it and said, we'll see what the horse is like tomorrow. But you're in the week, you're 5 days. It's they're not going. You kind of knew that, and so it was no surprise when they eventually announced that. But you're right, it did take certainly something out of it. Forever Young, that was only the 4th start of the season for Forever Young. Won the Saudi Cup to start the year, then 3rd in the Dubai World Cup, and laid off from that start in April until the beginning of October, and won a race in Japan in prep for the Breeders' Cup and wins the Breeders' Cup. So it was a limited season, but a pretty good season. But you would have to think, and I'll get your opinion, I've said to people, didn't Sovereignty maybe pick up Horse of the Year by default?
I think there's no chance he won't win Horse of the Year. I think with him not running in the Classic, I think the only ones that could have made a case for Horse of the Year would have been Sierra Leone if he had won, or Fierceness if he would have won, and maybe perhaps Mind Frame if he would have won. We go back to the fact that, I'm not going to give Horse of the Year to a horse that only runs one time in the U.S. I'm just not going to do it. And that's not taking anything away from Forever Young, but the Eclipse Awards are the Eclipse Awards for the best horse in America. And I think you have to show more than one race here to be a horse that's going to win our biggest horse award of the season.
I agree.
I think I don't know how Sovereignty can't win it. He ends the season with 5 wins and 6 starts, 3 of them grade 1s. When you have the Derby and the Belmont and the Travers, it's pretty hard to push him off the mountain. In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. And speaking of Eclipse Awards, I think over the weekend there was one slam dunk performance that is going to get the Eclipse, and I pulled up the replay from Friday of the Juvenile and Ted Noffey. And as I say, I think like with the Classic, there are some that put the division up in the air, some of the turf races and whatnot. The sprint we'll talk about in a few is interesting. But Ted Noffey, with now the after this win we're watching right now, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, adding to the Breeders' Futurity, the Hopeful up at Saratoga, 4 for 4 in the career. That was a pretty good-looking performance, and as I say, he seems like a slam dunk on the Eclipse side in the 2-year-old division.
Oh, I think there's absolutely no question about that. The fact that if he dominated this field, it was just this was the smallest field ever in the history of the Breeders' Cup. There were just 6 because of the 2 vet scratches, Blackout Time, and then Civil Liberty came out for Doug O'Neill. Yes, Ted Noffey was so impressive. Now, moving forward, right now he's the favorite for the Kentucky Derby. And we all know about the curse of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile on the Kentucky Derby. There's only been 2 winners of it that came back, juvenile winners that came back to win it. That was Street Sense and Nyquist. Although there's been a handful of others, 4 of them, I think, that ran in the juvenile that came back to win the Derby the next year with Sendabuck, Ali Sheba, Speed Hero, and Mind That Bird. So, to put it in a little perspective, last year at this time, the eventual top 3 finishers of the Kentucky Derby, Sovereignty was already been put away for the year with 3 starts. Heroism at that point had 1 start. Baeza had not even raced yet. So, to say that as impressive as Ted Noffey is, let's hand him the Eclipse for this year. And, Todd Fletcher's, he's got a monster heading into the prep season. But, if history has anything to say about it, there's going to be a lot more horses that we don't even know about yet that are going to come out and have a say in the 3-year-old prep season. But for right now, Ted Noffey is, as we say every year after the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, this is the horse that you're going to look forward to seeing running in May, hopefully.
Yeah, it was certainly an impressive 2-year-old campaign with an exclamation point on Breeders' Cup weekend. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, and you and I were talking before we went on the air. You said you like Scylla in the distaff. We're going to take a look at the stretch run here. Scylla is going to be the victor, number 4 Scylla, with Junior Alvarado on board for Bill Mott. Nitrogen, who I've liked throughout her career. I've talked about it a bunch of times. I had her last year up at Woodbine at a big price and got a little disappointed at Breeders' Cup last year. Same thing. But she's had a phenomenal career, turf and dirt, winds up 2nd, Regal 3rd. The disappointment was Seismic Beauty is the favorite up the track. But it was a dominant performance by Scylla. First win of the season for Scylla. She'd been 0-5 before, but with 4 in-the-money finishes. But you said before we went on the air, you were, tagging along with Bill Mott during the week. And I had heard from people there was a little buzz on Scylla coming into the race. Your thoughts on the distaff?
There was a lot of buzz on Scylla coming into the race. And Bill was very high on this filly heading into this race. If you would have called me, Seth, I would have given it to you.
Yeah. At 7-1, that was a nice price too.
And the morning line was 15, so this wasn't the CAW bringing that price down. The word was out on Scylla, and she had it work earlier in the week. She went 46, which was an eye-popping.
Yeah.
Maybe thinking people say, "Hey, maybe she might have went too fast." But Bill said right afterwards, he goes, "Oh, this is something that she does. This is the way she works." The key to that race, Seth, is when she went right to the lead, and Junior Alvarado did not fight her. He let her roll. Running 22 and 45, you're thinking, is that a little too fast? Is she going to come back to the rest of the field? But she didn't. She found another gear, and she never stopped. And it was, poetic justice maybe that after Bill lost sovereignty, comes back to get Scylla to the winner's circle, because those are the only two horses he had out there. And he had said to me more than once that he really liked this filly heading into the race. And that's not a Bill Mott thing. He doesn't do that very often. So, the way he trained that, the scheduling he had for her, because during the season, she was sprinting. I mean, she was second in the Ballerina. She was third in the Honorable Miss, second in the Better Roses. But then right before her prep for the distaff was the Spinster at 1.8 miles down in Kentucky, and she was third. And Bill thought that put more foundation into her to go to the distance, the 1.8 miles at the distaff. And he was right. This is a horse that's been a bridesmaid for much of her career. And now that, like you said, it was her first win of the year in her sixth start. She ends with, 6 wins and 16 starts for her career. Judd Mott's always been a player in this game, and, she put it all together on the right day. And, it's hats off to the job that the Mott team and, along with Neil Pasansky, his assistant that was out there with him, that whole team just, they were able to pick themselves up off the mat after sovereignty was out and focused on Scylla, and they got paid off for that. That the effort worked for them.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't completely do away with the disappointment, but that is a nice consolation prize. Pick up the better part of a multi-million-dollar purse in a Breeders' Cup race with Scylla. And you mentioned going right to the lead. I'll ask you, buzz around the track or in the press box, because certainly here at the Racebook on Saturday, track was certainly playing to speed over the weekend.
It was. That's why another kudo if you jump back to the Classic where Sierra Leone, nearly beat the bias, but it was a speed favoring track. And you look at the dirt mile, when Nysos was able to run down or just get his head in front of stablemate Citizen Bull, who was no disgrace in that, and because he's been face it, since winning the Juvenile last year, he's been probably a colossal disappointment for Bob Baffert. And he was another one of the guys I had to deal with every day, and he had 13 horses in the Classic in the Breeders' Cup over the 2 days. So I'm sure it's a good thing that I have a good relationship with him, because he didn't seem to be getting sick and tired of talking to me every single day about 13 horses.
And since you brought up Nysos, I'll pull up that replay now because it was, as far as, I said Ted Nuffy, a slam dunk, Forever Young, very impressive. This was probably the most exciting race of the 2 days, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. It'll be a ding-dong battle between two Baffert trainees, Nysos and Citizen Bull. And Citizen Bull winds up with the head victory in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Just give us some thoughts on the race. And I'm guessing there was a nice crowd reaction as they came under the wire.
Well, the fact that the Classic was gone, it was over already.
Good point.
A lot of people left. I'm not going to say that the place was jammed, but the people that stayed, and it's not like it was Aqueduct on a Wednesday. Don't get me wrong. There was still a healthy amount of people there, but after the Classic ended, there was exodus. There were people leaving, but the people that stayed really got treated to a phenomenal performance by these two Baffert runners. And Bob had said, he wanted Nysos to run, and he was hoping to get Nysos to the Classic, but it didn't work out because he got hurt before the Pacific Classic and missed that race, so he had to readjust the horse's schedule, and he was heading to the dirt mile. And the thing about Nysos, he's now 6 wins and 7 career starts, and the only loss came by a neck in that Churchill Downs race. Derby weekend. That was his return after being put on the shelf after the Robert B. Lewis last year. But Baffert said, and this is a compliment that he doesn't throw things around like this. He said Nysos is the closest horse he's had to American Pharoah since the Triple Crown winner of 15. He was that high on him. This horse. He would have been a player in the Classic had he gotten there. Would he have won? I don't know, maybe. But he's the kind of horse that could be called a generational talent. And the fact that I believe he's going to come back next year. So the older, him in the older horse division next year, he might be at the top of the list. Depending on what they do with Sovereignty, because there's been no decision made on what he's going to do next year, which I thought that they said all along that they want to run, that Godolphin wants to run him in out in Dubai. And if that happens, could that be the end for him? Or would he come back, maybe take a break from that, run the Whitney, and then go back to the Breeders' Cup Classic and try that? There's been talk that he could end up in the Pegasus before going to Dubai if he runs, but that decision is yet to be made. He didn't leave California until I think it was Wednesday, because they weren't going to let him leave there until he was well enough to travel, and he was well enough to travel by then. So fingers crossed that he does come back, because racing needs stars to stick around. I mean, it was great that we had Fierceness and the Mind Frame back this year, and to have and Torpedo Anna, who came back this year. But the game needs to have the stars stick around. It's not like the old days when you'd have horses that were running. But the breeding is such a big business that's going to take precedence a lot of times.
Yeah, he shipped to a rehab barn in Kentucky, and they haven't made a decision. But I'm with you. I hope he comes back. Nysos being a 4-year-old, but with only 7 starts, and that was his first Grade 1. I would love to see him come back and prove what you said, because I agree. I think he could be very special. So keeping our fingers crossed on some of these. I wanted to get some thoughts as well. Pulled up a replay of the sprint, and it's going to be Ben Tornado. I liked Imagination over Ben Tornado. An Imagination at 8-1 ran pretty well, ran second here, but Ben Tornado, number 10, an impressive winner of the sprint, pretty much on the front end as the favorite. Imagination, the 7, runs second. Dr. Venkman runs third. But I pulled this up for a couple of reasons. Jose D'Angelo trained this horse, and She's So Spicy, wins 2 Breeders' Cup races. Yeah. To me, he's been kind of an up-and-comer for the past few years, and I think now he has surpassed that label when you win a couple of Breeders' Cup races. So that was notable. On board was Irad Ortiz, who won the Shoemaker Award as the leading jockey. He had 3 wins over the weekend. So to me, the sprint kind of showcased a trainer and a jockey who had a pretty good weekend, Irad Ortiz and Jose D'Angelo.
Yeah, and two of Irad's wins were with Jose. He had 3 wins on the day. He won the other race with Cypher for George Weaver in the first Breeders' Cup race on Friday. And there was talk out there about the Shoemaker Award and how that's great for the jockeys, and some people are kicking around the idea maybe they should have a trainer award too, for maybe called the D. Wayne Lucas Award, which, but some people are saying, well, if they do that, the guys that are going to win it are going to be the guys that have the most horses, and they're going to have a Baffert or an Aidan O'Brien or a Todd Fletcher or a Chad Brown. If they have the most horses, they're going to be the most likely winner of that award. But my thought was, instead of just doing it the way they do the Shoemaker Award, whoever gets the most wins, and then they have a point system after that for tiebreakers, you let the media vote on the best trainer of the weekend. Because Baffert and Jose both had 2 wins. Baffert would have, if they had a trainer award like they do for the jocks and did the same point system, Baffert would have run away with it because he had multiple seconds and thirds, and Jose did not. So I think if you had a vote, you let the media vote on who had the best training weekend. Yeah. Jose might have won it because he went back-to-back races and his first 2 Breeders' Cup wins. Bob also he had a great weekend too. But I think if the media voted on it rather than a point system for the trainers, it might make it more of a level playing field, and you get someone like Jose D'Angelo that would get a lot of votes. So that's just my thoughts on that.
I like that. I like that idea. Just a couple more quick thoughts on the weekend. I had to pull up the Breeders' Cup turf, and I was curious as to what the reaction might have been in the press box or around the track to this one. Marcus Hurst, I think, tweeted out that he was yelling down the stretch, "It can't be!" Ethical Diamond wins it. Ethical Diamond, who earlier this year had been over the hurdles in England, comes to the United States in the Breeders' Cup when I guess a medical issue kept him from going to the Melbourne Cup, but they wound up making a good move. Willie Mullins, who's known on the jump side over in Europe, gets the victory with Ethical Diamond. And as they say, I'm just curious what the reaction was to that one.
Well, I wasn't in the press box for that. I was out on track for all the races. We were out on the track, and it was almost like, who won that? Who? It's because everyone was expecting that Rebels Romance was going to, and hey, Rebels Romance ran a great race. Don't get me wrong. He was bidding to become a 3-time winner of this race. Won it last year, and then the year before, and then he skipped the year before that, and then he won the year before that. He won in 22, 24, and 20, and he would have been 25. That Charlie Appleby, you have a horse that's raced 30 times and has 20 wins. That's the 7-year-old has just done phenomenal things his whole career. And sentimentally, I was hoping that he would get it done here, but it wasn't to be. But Ethical Diamond, tip your hat to the to the job that Willie Mullins did there. I mean, it was not my dance card. I can tell you that.
No, it was certainly a fun storyline. I don't know how many people had it, but it was a fun storyline on the weekend, no question about it. And in that eclipse, I'm wondering if that didn't. Now we don't now default to notable speech off the Woodbine Mile win and the Breeders' Cup Mile. Rebels Romance, that's going to be an interesting category as well. And just quickly before we wind up, I pulled up a replay of the juvenile fillies from Friday. Super Corridora getting it done at $19 and change for John Sadler, and I brought that up because part of the ownership group are friends at West Point. Now, I wonder if you ran into any of the West Point folks over the weekend celebrating their Breeders' Cup victory.
I actually saw Terry and Debbie Finley leaving the track on Friday. I was standing out. I was on Baffert hunt looking for him after one of the races. They were leaving, and I had a nice little chat with them. Of course, they were over the moon. They beat Explorer. Explorer was the favorite in that race. They won by 3/4 of a length. And this horse won this race after just breaking her maiden in her third start. Terry thinks they got a horse that could make some noise in the Kentucky Oaks next year, and he's got that right to crow a little bit about it after winning this race. This horse has some talent, and John Sadler, he knows his way around a racetrack.
Yeah.
I mean, for years it was the fact that he couldn't win a big race, the Breeders' Cup, and after was it Accelerate won his first one, I think, a couple of years back, and I think that was who it was, wasn't it? And no, was that? No. Who was the horse that won his first Breeders' Cup race?
When you said that, I'm trying to think. I don't remember.
But, he's I want to say Accelerate. I could be wrong. But, that's it was a good story. It's a good story for West Point, and I think that it takes a lot to get to the Kentucky Oaks. But I know a lot of people around here because you got Tom Bellhouse who lives up here, and a lot of West Pointers are up here, and it's going to give them something to really look forward to next spring.
Yeah, and you mentioned broke the maiden in the third career start, first time around 2 turns. And so, again, the Breeders' Cup, obviously around 2 turns, so may just have been appreciating the distance. And it should be fun to watch, again, with some local connections involved. Tim, appreciate the conversation. Again, we're a week out. Wanted to get some thoughts from somebody who was out there enjoying the weekend. And you were out there for the Notes team, so you were bouncing around the backstretch and couldn't have had a better guy to tap into to get some thoughts, but we appreciate it, and we'll talk again.
Seth, thank you. Thanks for the work you do.
Appreciate it. Tim Wilkin, again, he was out for Breeders' Cup week, Notes team, so boots on the ground, as it were, conversation on Friday and Saturday, Breeders' Cup, as we are a week away. But we're at preview. That was a little preview of a couple of nice stakes at Laurel today, 2 nice 2-year-old stakes. The 2-year-old season-ending stakes down in Maryland are always fun to me. And today, again, girls and the boys sprinting down in Maryland. We'll get some thoughts on those 2 races right after this when we're joined by John Piassek. Stay tuned.
The 2025 Global Symposium on Racing. It's the premier networking event of the year. Connect with the who's who of racing. Collaborate face-to-face with key decision makers. Be a part of the international conversation. Discover the latest technology and innovation. Join us December 8th through 10th. Register at racingsymposium.com.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Yes, today at Laurel, the Smart Halo and the James F. Lewis, a couple of nice 2-year-old stakes with really nice full fields. And somebody commented yesterday on Twitter, a West Coast writer, in fact, put on Twitter, man, nice full fields at Laurel on a Friday, which was true. But these 2 stakes have nice full competitive fields as well. So I thought, who better to reach out to than our friend John Piassek, who covers and makes some picks for Maryland racing, typically for our friend Frank Vesby's, the racingbiz.com. John, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. How are you today?
Very good. Happy to have you on board. And I said when I reached out to you yesterday and just before we went on the air, we'll get thoughts, obviously, on the 2 stakes races, but obviously being a week out, some thoughts on the Breeders' Cup as well. We just did a Breeders' Cup review with our friend Tim Wilkin, who was out there last week, and there were some fun storylines, some logicals, and some not so much. Ethical Diamond winning the turf was a little bit surprising, but Forever Young was impressive. Ben Tornado was impressive. What were your overall impressions from last weekend?
Well, the main story in my book is Splendora winning the Breeders' Cup Billion Mary Sprint, a Maryland bred. I believe the 7th time a Maryland bred has won a Breeders' Cup race. She was bred by Stuart Grant of the Elkstone Group, who's been a breeder in Maryland for a long, long time. He bought her dam, Miss Freeze, for $45,000 at Keeneland about 5 years ago in full to Audible, and it produced Splendora, sold her for $125,000 about 3 years ago. And she's taken a while to kind of get her feet under her. She had looked pretty good in like allowance company, but hadn't quite been able to break through in stakes races. Now is finally getting to shine on a big stage. And, it was kind of a depleted field in the Philly and Mary Sprint with some big scratches, but take nothing away from her. She's had a great trip, kicked away powerfully in the stretch, and I'm just thrilled for Stewart and everybody in Maryland.
Yeah, and those are fun stories as well. When breeders hit the big, we don't hear enough about the backstory of horses and the breeders, because there are the smaller breeders, or the jurisdictions like Maryland that aren't as prominent as Florida or Kentucky, but they produce nice horses, and you love to see it. Goes out and gets the mare for, as you say, $45,000, and then a couple of years later they wind up winning a Breeders' Cup. So those are great storylines.
Absolutely. And as you talked about on the Maryland Million show a few weeks ago, a great horse can come from anywhere, any state, any sire, any dam. There's a lot of hidden gems out there. It's not just all happening in Kentucky. And I think the success that Stewart had, not just on the Breeders' Cup stage, but in the Mid-Atlantic year after year, is a testament to that.
Yeah, no question about it. Just before we get to the Maryland races, going back to the Classic and Forever Young, phenomenal performance. But we were talking with Tim earlier, and it seems like, do you agree? Did Sovereignty win the Horse of the Year title by default?
Yes. I think the only way he could have lost it is if Fierceness, Sierra Leone, or Journalism had won. Yeah. They would have won Horse of the Year. Forever Young's a very nice horse, but his resume, especially here in the States, is not that great. And of course, had Sovereignty run in the Preakness and probably won it, he would have clinched the Horse of the Year already. But fortunately for his people, he is able to secure the Horse of the Year title in spite of that. And we'll see what happens with him next year. I'd love to see him run at 4. It's kind of a cliche phrase, but I really don't think we have seen his best. He's just, I think, head and shoulders above the rest of the horses in his crop. So hopefully Mott and Godolphin bring him back for another spin next year.
Yeah, Forever Young was certainly impressive. There's no question about it. But Tim Wilkin said, and I agree, it's hard to pull the trigger on a horse that made one start in the country. Right. It's an American award, and Sovereignty had the whole year. So it's going to – a lot of these – Ted Noffey, I think I said earlier, was the slam dunk. Some of these categories, I think, became very interesting. Ben Tornado and Bookham Dano, that in the sprint is going to be the really interesting one to see how people go.
I think Bookham Dano has already clinched the award in spite of him not going to the Breeders' Cup. Because to your point, it's like Horse of the Year, Sprinter of the Year, not just Horse of one day. Horse of one day. Now, Ben Toronto, as you said, looked very good in the sprint, and he's a very nice horse. But Bookham Dano was a 4-time stakes winner this year. There's not that many grade 1s for sprinters out there, but he won one of them and won a grade 2. On pure ability, I think there's little doubt he's the best sprinter. I would have loved to see him at the Breeders' Cup. I don't have much doubt that he would have won, but I still think because of his success earlier this year, he still deserves the eclipse. Yeah,
and being a homer, he had such a great season up at Saratoga. I'm pretty much with Bookham Dano as well. All right, let's go. I said earlier that the late season 2-year-old stakes at Laurel, to me, are always intriguing. We have a couple of them this afternoon. Let's start things out. Race 8 this afternoon down at Laurel is the Smart Halo. 6 furlongs for the 2-year-old fillies. I pulled up a replay of Holland Drive, winning at Horseshoe Indian, the career debut for, I'll say, up-and-comer Will Walden. I had a great interview this summer with Will Walden, if people want to go back and pull that up on the Capital OTB YouTube channel. But went off as the 4-5 favorite in here and won like it pretty easily in the career debut. A daughter of Practical Joke. Holland Drive, very intriguing to me. Just Filtered is probably going to be my pick, though, for Trombetta. Going turf to dirt, but has some dirt success underneath. Prosecco Rita's interesting. Superstitious. Fun race. The Smart Halo. How did you see it?
Holland Drive is interesting, especially because Will scratched his other entry. Beach Heist, coming off a big maiden win at Keeneland. She finished third yesterday at Aqueduct, so clearly Will thinks Holland Drive is his best shot, at least on dirt. You mentioned Just Filtered. I think she is very strictly the one to beat. She is Maryland Royalty by the perennial leading sire Great Notion, out of Slow and Steady, who from 12 starters, has produced 12 winners. and many other horses in her family, many grandsons and granddaughters have done good work as well. As you said, she's been great on both dirt and grass. She got into a lot of traffic trouble in her maiden race back in May, still kicked away to win by 8. Then beat Superstitious twice at Colonial Downs. Superstitious, of course, came back to win the Maryland Million Lassie in her next start. Just Filtered took a swing last time out in the matron at Aqueduct. Might have been a bit outclassed that day. Now gets to come back home, which is back to dirt, which I think is her best surface in spite of her successes on grass. And she has good tactical speed, and she's breaking from the inside, doesn't have to go, and sits just off the pace. And as long as the hole opens up, I think she'll kick away very easily. And I'm excited to see what she does, not just today, but down the road. I mean, horses, many of her half brothers and half sisters have done well going 2 turns. Obviously, it's only November, and she has not gone beyond 6 furlongs, but it's hard not to dream.
Yeah, so far so good with 3 wins in 4 starts. And, you know, the only loss was against Graded Company up in New York in the Matron last time, again, on the turf. I put that one on top. But Holland Drive, to me, as I say, interesting as well. 9th race is the James F. Lewis, 2-year-olds going 3/4 of a mile. I pulled up a replay in here of Big Cuddle winning the Maryland Million Nursery to go 2 for 2. The up-and-coming jock on board, Hazelwood, for the first 2 victories, and on board again today. So this is an interesting horse for me off the 2 for 2 so far. But I thought Gurney Halleck may be intriguing as well. I put that one on top coming in from Charlestown. I wasn't sure on the venue move and being a West Virginia bred, but that one's interesting. Channel of Music, going turf to dirt. Balboa also intrigues me, coming in from the West Coast, moving into the Brittany Russell stable from having raced for Bob Baffert in the first few starts of the career. Again, nice field of 11 scheduled, fun event. What did you see in the Lewis?
This is a wide open race. I think you can go in many different directions. I ended up picking Balboa on top because I think he is the most likely winner. He looked very good, breaking his maiden at Delmar, tried Grade 1 Company in his next 2, didn't do too much. And what's interesting is this is an SF Starlight horse who was with Bob Baffert, and Brittany Russell usually gets, for lack of a better phrase, the reject pile, horses who have never shown anything at all out in California. This horse did show a lot of ability, as mentioned, just not quite in the A-team of Baffert. Comes over here, so it's kind of unusual to see Brittany get this good a horse this early in their career. That being said, I think because of the Russell factors, he'll be over bet. So I think from a win perspective, there's a few other directions to go. My second choice is number 6, Max Capacity at 20-1 on the morning line. He's one of, I believe, 2 in here who is beating winners. He did so here about 2 weeks ago in First Level Allowance Company. His only bad races came on the synthetic at Presque Downs and on off-track at Dover. Really, he runs his best races when he hits the front. He's blew the field away twice, and both times he had a clear lead at the quarter pole. So you got to figure Jevion Toledo is just going to be hell for leather out of the gate. And if he opens up a clear lead, he might not be able to be caught.
I looked at Max Capacity, and I had some check marks against some of the things you mentioned. And the race last time, if we get back to that or can improve off of that, and that may have been, 4th career start, may have been a little bit of a light bulb moment. So we may expect a repeat or a move forward. And I didn't pull the trigger on Max Capacity, but as you're talking about it, I'm looking again. If that price holds up, I may have to toss a couple of bucks on Max Capacity. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how the wagering is going to shake out, but I think this is definitely a spread race in the late pick 5, which of course has a 12% takeout. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think Just Filtered is, if you're ever going to single a horse, I think Just Filtered is a horse to single. So by singling Just Filtered, it gives you a little more options to spread in the James Lewis and possibly catch a good price. Yeah, it's, again, 2 fun stakes. Sprinting 2-year-olds, but it's that time of year where they have the potential to stretch out and go longer. And again, there's some nice 2-year-old stakes coming up a little bit later in the year down at Laurel that are fun as well. And maybe we'll see some of these pop out of that. But I definitely did want to give a little preview to that. And John, just as we were talking, I pulled up the racingbiz.com, and your selections for the day are over there if people want the whole card. So they can swing by theracingbiz.com for that. But we appreciate the thoughts on the 2 stakes, and we'll talk again.
Sounds good, Seth. Take care.
All right, John Piassek again. 2 nice stakes, 2 nice 2-year-old stakes on the Laurel this afternoon. All right, why don't we take a quick break? I'll come back and wrap it up with just some news and notes on the day before we call it a morning. So stay tuned.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry Program has served as a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals, with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you want to earn a degree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
The 2025 Global Symposium on Racing. It's the premier networking event of the year. Connect with the who's who of racing. Collaborate face-to-face with key decision makers. Be a part of the international conversation. Discover the latest technology and innovation. Join us December 8th through 10th. Register at racingsymposium.com.
Do you like free money? Well, Capital OTB gives its players plenty of opportunities to cash in. At Capital OTB, there are so many ways for horse players to receive bonus dollars by simply participating in promotions such as our bankrolls, bounty bets, online handicapping contests, and much, much more. Plus, with Capital OTB's Player Rewards Program, you get actual cash back. So what are you waiting for? Log on today at CapitalOTB.com or CapitalOTBBet.com and claim your free money.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. If you were watching and playing yesterday, you know it was a little bit of a confounding sequence at Aqueduct in the pick 6, which leads to a carryover. They paid 4 out of 6 yesterday. That's how confounding it was. And just looking, started out with a $7 winner, then a $27 winner, $9 winner. Atfield, a good story. I had Tom Morley on up in Saratoga this year in Atfield, named after a longtime assistant in the barn and had won up at Saratoga and now a stakes winner. So again, it continues to be a nice story for all the connections of Atfield, but won of the stakes yesterday for Tom Morley and company. But that one, $9, then $10 and change, but then a couple of long prices also, $23, and we wound up today, Bay of Bengal for Graham Motion at $48. So it's a 4 out of 6 payout in the pick 6, which leads to a $22,000 carryover today. So if you're a pick 6 player in New York, keep that in mind for today. Pick 6 carryover. Do want to note also, I have the recap that Naira sends out, which goes over the day and gives totals on trainers and jockeys. And I just wanted to note, the Belmont at Aqueduct meet ended last Sunday, and the Aqueduct meet started Thursday. So we've had 2 days. Flavien Prat continued his role after arriving back from the Breeders' Cup at 3 a.m. Sunday morning. I'll talk in a moment about Sunday afternoon at Belmont at Aqueduct, but 2 days down at Aqueduct now, 6 wins. So pretty good start over a couple of days. He is the leader early. It's very early. Linda Rice with 3 wins leads after a couple of days. But I have the recap after Sunday, which has that Belmont fall meet, the Belmont at Aqueduct meet totals. Manny Franco with 40, Flavien Prat and Ricardo Santana each with 33. So Manny Franco is the leader, but Flavien Prat bounces up into second place, a tie for second place, with a 7-win day on Sunday. It was phenomenal. If you were watching Sunday, it was just incredible to see Flavien Prat. Again, he was out at the Breeders' Cup, had a good Breeders' Cup, came back on the red eye, so got in, it was reported at about 3 a.m., a few hours of sleep, goes over to Aqueduct, and just misses in the first race. Then he wins the next 6 races. He didn't have a mount in the next race, won the following race, and in the finale just missed. Now, he now is and I would say we can probably guess. I suppose there's a possibility. But I was going to say he will be the all-time leader as Aqueduct is essentially going to go away because there were a group of jockeys that were tied, having 6 wins in a day at Aqueduct. So he surpassed that with the 7. And the list was phenomenal. I mean, it was Hall of Famers. And so just it was an incredible day to watch. And as I say, he missed the finale by that much, or he would have had 8 wins. But jockey's side of things, again, Manny Franco was the leader. Flavian and Ricardo Santana second, tied for second. Kendrick Carmouche third. Dylan Davis fourth, and Junior Alvarado and Joel Rosario tied behind that. On the trainer side of things, Chad Brown 32 victories. Belmont at Aqueduct, Linda Rice 26, Mike Maker 20, Rudy Rodriguez 14, and George Weaver 10. Todd Pletcher was just behind with 9. So again, there's your wrap up on that Belmont at Aqueduct fall meet, which again wound up on Sunday. I do want to alert you again, we hit on the 2 nice stakes at Laurel, but there's a nice stake. There's 2 or 3 stakes at Woodbine today, but one is definitely worth looking at, the Bessarabian, because it brings back for what the preview sounded like the last Woodbine start for Caitlin Her Greatness. Caitlin Her Greatness won the 2024 King's Plate, went on to become the Sovereign Award-winning 3-year-old filly up in Canada last year. Caitlin Her Greatness is in that Bessarabian. It's race number 9 at Woodbine today. She might have one more race. The article I read said at Turfway in December. That's possible. But otherwise, so far in the career, 15 starts, 5 wins, 3 seconds, 2/3, and again, a King's Plate winner in a very full field in the Bessarabian. It's going to be a nice group. La Servier is in for Miguel Clement. Miguel has another runner in there. Serene Seraph, Bill Mott trainee. Jeremiah Engelhart is bringing up Tricky Temper. Mark Cassie has a couple of runners in there. Fun, competitive field of, it is going to be a field of 14, we assume, because there are 16 entrants. A couple of them are AEs. So it should be a really nice, full, competitive field in the Bessarabian this afternoon. Again, race number 9 up at Woodbine. And finally, Mystic Dan has been officially retired. Was scheduled for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile last weekend and what was a vet scratch. But at Churchill Downs this afternoon, and if you watch our feed, I'm sure you'll be able to see it. He will parade in the paddock before the 4th race. It should be sometime between 2 o'clock and 2:30 for that. He'll parade before the 4th race. So again, if you're watching and you'd like to see a little celebration for the 2024 Kentucky Derby winner, Mystic Dan. Nice career. 16 starts, 5 wins, 3 seconds, 1/3, just under $5 million in earnings, and winds up the career with a victory in the Grade 2 Lucas Classic. So Mystic Dan retired, but will be paraded this afternoon before the 4th race down at Churchill. All right, I'm going to be looking at a little Churchill this afternoon and some Aqueduct as well. So tune in a little bit later on for OTB Live for Saturday morning into afternoon, because we will kick things off a little bit earlier. Again, it's an 11:40 post time today at Aqueduct. So I would expect, I'm watching the monitor, I would expect their pregame show to start sooner rather than later. That's why we started soon. Typically, they're about an hour and a half, but it's not locked in necessarily. But they will be coming up, as I say, sooner rather than later for the NYRA pregame show. So stay tuned for that. And again, be aware, it's an 11:40 post time today, because I did have somebody say to me yesterday, I missed the first race because they were early yesterday as well. And again, that will be the case, that they're going to bounce around between these 11:30, 11:40 post times, 12:10. throughout November and December, it seems like. So just if you're playing New York and you pull up the PPs, take an extra look at when that first race is going off for the next couple of months. All right, Seth Merrow in the studio for Racing Across America on a Saturday morning. A little recap of the Breeders' Cup, little look at some of the action for this afternoon, which looks fun, and we will be here this afternoon looking closely at that for Aqueduct and Churchill. So have a good rest of your morning. Again, the NYRA pregame show coming up shortly, and we'll be back in an hour and a half or so with OTB Live for a Saturday morning into the afternoon. We'll see you then. Racing Across America is sponsored by Sakatoga Stable, home of Funnyside and 'Tis the Law. Be part of Sakatoga's next great story with ownership opportunities now available in our yearlings. Get on the bus at sakatoga.com.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.